Okay, I think that we can start this webinar of today. Good morning, everybody. I'm Silvia Campailla and I work for the municipality of Genoa, which is one of the partners of the ELVITEN project. Thank you to take part to this webinar today. This webinar is organized in the framework of ELVITEN. ELVITEN is an Horizon 2020 project co-founded by the European Commission. We are at the end of the project, but we are still to realize activities in order to give to stakeholders, to users interested in our project, information, lesson learned, results of our project. The aim of ELVITEN is to promote the usage of the electric light vehicle to local citizens and business. Here you can have some information about the project. The consortium is composed by 21 partners and there are 6 pilot cities. Here you can show the city in the map. The aim of the project is to promote the usage of the electric light vehicles to local citizens and businesses, to increase the awareness of the benefits of electric mobility, and to define a business model for services related to the ELVs. Here you can see the agenda of today with the topic that we will touch with our partners and the speaker. The speaker are all partners of the project. We have worked together also with the other cities of the project. Before start the webinar, some general info. If you have questions, please write them in the chat. At the end, there is a dedicated session to question and answers, so we can take care of your question at the end of the presentation. Please turn off your camera if you are not the actual speaker, and turn off your microphone if you don't have to speak in the moment. And I remember you that the webinar is registered, so we can upload it on the website of the project at the end. Now I give the floor to my colleague. In particular, in this moment, I give the floor to Andrew Winder from Hertico. So please, Andrew.
Hello, good morning. Good afternoon, sorry. So I've been, I will give a presentation on some of the survey results that we did at the end of this project. So I'll show my screen now. I'll turn off my camera just because I think the image is not very good. So I'll show this. So we did a few surveys at the beginning, at the end of the ELVITEN project in the demonstration cities, and this is about experiences and recommendations for the use of light electric vehicles. So I will show the purpose of the surveys. We did surveys on citizens, whether they used vehicles or not, and the users of the ELVITEN services as well. So that was a separate survey. We did citizen surveys, a very wide citizen survey about 2.5 years ago, near the beginning of the project. So this was to see the a priori needs and perceptions of light electric vehicles. vehicles before we started the demonstrations. Then at the end of the project, it was not planned in the project timeline, but so it was an extra task that we did in 4 of the cities, in Bari, Genoa, Malaga, and Tricolo. We did a final survey of citizens online, which was more restricted because we did it in summer, and of course the city councils had other more important things like COVID to deal with, so it wasn't publicized as much, but we still got over 700 responses. And then we also did a survey of registered users at the end of the demonstration period, which was last July, August, that has just gone. The citizen survey.
Sorry, Andrew.
Yeah.
We don't see your presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Show screen. Bum, bum, bum. Hang on, I'm just looking where to put the screen. Can Sylvia, maybe you need to give me the screen, I think. Okay. I'll share screen.
Yes, now we can see it.
You see, I'm very sorry about that. Okay, so okay, this was just the title slide. This was just the contents and the purpose that I mentioned, and then we did these 2018 and 2020 surveys in some of the cities. So 2 of the cities, Berlin and Rome, were not able to do the post survey in 2020 because of because of difficulties in disseminating it. So we just did it in 4 cities. And the citizen survey was disseminated via a link that people could answer in their own language, so in Italian, Greek, Spanish, or German, and also in English. So it was the same questionnaire, and it was an anonymous questionnaire. So the thing to note is that it's not necessarily the same people who answered in 2018 and 2020, because we don't know who they are anonymous. And we got in 2020 739 responses from 4 of these cities. So we can't say that it's a strict before and after comparison because the numbers are different and the people are different. But I think what I am about to show will give you some indications. The user survey was a bit different, and this was asking about the usage of the ELVITEN vehicles and the satisfaction. And this was done in all of the 6 cities during July and August, which was just after the end of the demonstration. And this was an email link sent to the registered users. And this is the number of responses. Of course, the registered users are different in each city. So you see Genoa only 4 responses, but that's because it was focused on long-term business use only, and there were only 7 registered users in total. So it's not as bad as it looks, because 4 out of 7 is pretty good. In some other cities, I think in Rome, for example, there were about 100 registered users. So we're on about 32%. So those are the user survey responses. So I'll go into the results now of the citizen survey. Very briefly, there's the profile of respondents. You can see on the left is the age group. More than 3/4 are the mid-age group, 30 to 59. And on the right is gender. So it was mostly men. We did aim to increase the attractiveness and awareness of electric light vehicles to all age groups and both women as well as men, but it is true, I think, in other micromobility modes, there is a majority of males using it. So this is something that maybe needs to be addressed more in the future. We asked people what mode of transport they use as their main mode. So only one, the main one that they use in their city. And we asked them which it was at the beginning of this year, January and February, before all the COVID restrictions came, and what it was last summer in June and July after the first wave of restrictions and when there was a bit more freedom. And you can see the differences are quite big between the cities. There was a slight fall in car use in Bari, Genoa and Malaga, but it rose in Tricolour. There was increase in walking in Genoa and Malaga, but a fall in walking in Bari and Tricolour. Increasing cycling in Bari and Genoa, but it fell in Malaga and Tricolour. So it doesn't reflect what many of us think, that people are moving towards walking and cycling a lot more since COVID restrictions. It is really depending on the city. I think we should also consider that the number of responses there's maybe some bias, and also because the cities are very different. Tricolour is a much smaller city than the other three. Also, Genoa is a very hilly city, and Bari, Malaga and Tricolour are much flatter, so easier for walking and cycling. And lastly, the three bigger cities, Malaga, Bari and Genoa, have comprehensive public transport, and Tricolour is a smaller city with a lower level of public transport, but it's because it's smaller, people can walk and cycle to most areas of the city quite easily. So you have to take that into account. Public transport towards the right of each graph, that fell quite a lot in all of the cities. In Tricolour, it was already on a low level, but in Bari especially, it fell quite a lot. And then there was a slight increase in e-bike use, which is the third one here, in all of the cities apart from Malaga. Other things like electric light vehicles were at a very low level, but you do see in Bari on the top left, a big increase from almost in e-microscooter use from almost nothing to 35 respondents out of, okay, the total number was here 116, so it was around 25-30%. Okay, we asked people if they would be willing to use an electric light vehicle sharing scheme, and the results, I think, were very positive. You see on the left the numbers, absolute numbers per city, and on the right is the percentages for all of the cities together. So if you look on the right hand diagram, you've got 22% saying they would be willing to use such a scheme frequently and 27% occasionally. So that's a total of 49% willing to use such a scheme regularly or occasionally. And then a further 10%, which is the grey here on the top left, would say they would prefer to buy their own electric light vehicle instead of use a sharing scheme. So that added to the 49%, you've got quite a majority interested in these modes. Only 11% said that they would not be prepared to use such a scheme. Again, we have to realize that there might be some bias because the people who chose to answer the survey may be the ones who are more interested in electric light vehicles or mobility, new mobility modes in general, and those who are not interested in this probably ignored the survey. So we have to take that into account. We also compared this with the survey done 2.5 years ago, and the results are slightly different. Sometimes the willingness went down a little bit, but maybe this is also as a result of people becoming more aware of the types of schemes on offer. I think even if you've got 30 or 40% willing to use such a scheme, and that reduces the number of ICE cars and vans in a city centre, that is already a great result. I wouldn't necessarily consider that 84%, for example, would suddenly switch modes, but even if you've got 10 or 20% switching modes to light electric vehicles, this would also be good. So I think this is quite positive. Then we asked the citizens, so whether they're users or not, their perception in terms of agreeing or disagreeing with some statements. And one was about whether electric light vehicles are comfortable to use. And you see here that 61% said that they were comfortable or think that they may be comfortable. That's the strongly agree 25 and rather agree 36. That was quite similar to the results 2.5 years ago as well. You have some small differences from among the cities as well. Then we asked about whether parking would be easy and secure. And here we've got 67% either strongly agree or mostly agree that parking would be easy or secure. Only 6 plus 9, so 15% mostly disagreeing with that. We asked about their feeling of safety. So I feel safe, or I would feel safe and secure using an electric light vehicle. And the results again are quite positive. 61% strongly or mostly agreed with that statement, and 19%, so 12 or 7, disagreed or strongly disagreed with it. So I think there's still some perception work to do to reduce the amount of red there, but I think it's still quite a majority feeling safe. Of course, you've got quite a large number of don't knows, because these are citizens maybe have never tried using one of these vehicles. So it's reasonable to assume that a lot of people would not know, would not have a perception or an opinion on this. So when we come to the user survey, it will look a bit different because we don't give the don't know option there. We asked about electric light vehicle charging, and 52% thought that it would be convenient. Of course, you've got a much higher number here of don't knows, 31%, which is understandable because those who've never tried using an electric vehicle would maybe not know whether charging was convenient or not. And then affordability, are they affordable to use and operate? And again, we've got 49% agreeing or mostly agreeing, but also quite a large number, 31%, not knowing, because of course, again, if you've never used them, you don't know what they cost to use or operate. Of course, different types of electric vehicles have different costs. Of course, the ones we used in ELVITEN were not cheap pedelecs or micro scooters, but more expensive, fully electric L1E category vehicles. So they're called rad power bikes. We also used some vehicles from Kibbutz manufacturer in Switzerland, which will be presented by Philip Heim later in this webinar. And those are again towards the higher end of price and quality in electric light vehicles. So they're not all cheap vehicles. There is a certain cost to buy them, but then operation is usually very cheap. And then the last one on the statements was luggage capacity. Of course, whether you think it has sufficient luggage capacity depends whether the electric vehicle is a two-wheel bike or a three-wheeler or a small four-wheeler. So it does differ a little bit between the cities, but still 43% said that that there is sufficient luggage capacity for their needs, but 37% would not know. So again, I guess it depends also on the type of trip, the trip purpose that people are using the vehicles for, and what kinds of things, if anything, they need to carry with them. We asked whether people would be willing to use ELVs as a part of a multimodal trip. This was a key part of the project because we didn't want to push in ELVITEN electric light vehicles to take over from walking or cycling or public transport, but more as an alternative to internal combustion engine single-use cars, but also as a solution for last mile, for example, in a multimodal trip with public transport, and part of the journey could be made by an electric light vehicle to reach a public transport terminal. And also for business and delivery use. But I think it was quite positive. 8% said that they already do or have used electric light vehicles as part of a multimodal trip, and a further 57% said yes, they would use it in this way. We asked what the main challenges are in the future to electric light vehicle use, and you can see here that the price of the vehicles seems to be the main challenge for people. So if the price of vehicles does come down, then I think this will increase use. Limited charging infrastructure was seen as a barrier, and also limited range of the battery. And then finally in this, we asked what are the main measures to encourage electric light vehicle use? What should the authorities or businesses do to encourage the use of these vehicles? You can see the two main ones are the second bar, which is incentive schemes for purchase, like many countries do for electric cars and also for electric bikes. There are some purchase schemes where you get a subsidy, and also the bar towards the right is sufficient electric charging infrastructure. Another fairly important one towards the right of this graph is sufficient secure parking. Some of the other ones, by the way, people could name up to 3 measures here. So this is more than the number of total respondents, because people could give 1 or 2 or 3 different measures in a combination. On the other hand, measures like navigation services or user assistance or sharing schemes were not seen as important. Now we go on to the user survey. So these were the registered users in all 6 cities. And this is just the profile again. The profile, male, female, and an age group is very, very similar to the citizen survey. So 3/4 in the 30 to 59 age group, and over 3/4 of men. We asked how frequently the users used the light electric vehicles supplied by ELVITEN, and 55% used them more than 20 times. We didn't want to ask, do you use them once or twice a week or once a month or anything, because we know that during this year things have been a bit strange. Some people have some weeks maybe traveled every day and some weeks not traveled at all. So it's very difficult these days to ask people their regular pattern in a typical week or a typical month, because typical months have sort of don't exist anymore. So we just said, how many times in total did you use this type of vehicle during the demonstrations, which lasted almost a year in most cities, and 55% used more than 20 times. So we can say these are quite regular users. Another 13% used 11 to 20 times, so that's occasional users. And then the others, maybe these are just one-off people who were just trying it out. So we've got 2/3 to 3/4 are relatively, regular or occasional users, as opposed to just one-off users. We also asked about comfort and safety and other issues like in the citizen survey, but these were the actual users. And we said, do you agree or not if the comfort is similar to a internal combustion engine light vehicle? So about 80% agreed, either strongly or mostly, that it was as good or better. Ease of use and security, also 72% agreed mostly or strongly that it was as good or similar to ICE light vehicle. Able to reach destination easily and quickly. So 62% said very much so, and 31% said mostly. So that's 93%, and only 7% disagreed with that. So maybe that was due to traffic conditions or getting hold of the vehicle in the first place. I'm not sure, but this is, I think, overall very positive. And finally we said, are you satisfied with the service provided by ELVITEN? And it was 62% very satisfied and 32% mostly, so that's 94%, which is very high. We have to point out here that the service that we provided in ELVITEN for these demonstrations was free for the user, because it was an EU funded project. So you would expect a higher level of satisfaction for something that is free. If it was charged for, people may compare their level of satisfaction with the price they paid. And of course, any future scheme, there will have to be a price, because this was a free EU funded project to maximize usage and to get opinion data like this. We asked whether people would be willing to use these vehicles in the future. and again, very positive. Almost 2/3 said that they would be willing to use them for 4 days a week or more, and another 27% at least once a week. So, and then during the project, there were also some apps and tools that were provided. You can see them listed here: a unified app, which was for registration and access, and also to report problems or problems with the vehicle, for example. A booking app to book a vehicle, and also in some of the cities there were what we call e-hub, which is a secure parking space with charging facilities. There was a digital coach app providing information and eco-driving advice, so trip information and routing and eco-driving. A serious game app, which was a bit more fun, and this was aimed at tourists to discover the city, and incentive app to allow ELVITEN users to collect points, which we had a support network called a reference group in each city, where some different businesses can offer some incentives and prizes for people who collected points using ELVITEN vehicles, things like free meals or cinema tickets, this kind of thing. So it was a mixed result. So maybe only 36% used these apps, or one of them at least, on every trip. 24% used them on some trips, and 40% used them only once or never. So I think this is like many other areas. There were some people who find these kinds of apps quite useful, and some people are not interested in them and they just want to take the vehicle and go. So this was a mixed. You can also see in the cities, it's quite different. We've got a higher proportion using the apps in Bari, and a much lower proportion in Malaga using these apps. So that's the end of my presentation on the citizens and user survey. The full results of that will be in a deliverable which has been submitted, and it will be on the ELVITEN website fairly soon, I think in the next week or two. It's not there yet, but at the end of this, when you receive you can receive this presentation at the end of after the end of today, and you can keep up to date with the ELVITEN outputs online. Thank you very much. Pass back to Sylvia.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. And now we have a presentation from Giuseppe P. from S3T Transportation about the insights emerging from the ELVITEN data analysis. So I give the floor to Giuseppe.
Thank you very much, Sylvia, and welcome to everyone attending the seminar. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. Specifically, my presentation will go through presenting to you some brief insights from the data analysis that has resulted from monitoring all the vehicles that have been involved in the ELVITEN pilots. So I will now stop the video and share with you my screen. Here we are. Yes. I hope you are all seeing it without a problem. So first of all, what I would like to highlight, it's the importance of the amount of data that has been collected during the ELVITEN project. Here on the screen, you can see other data analysis that have been conducted in the realms of electromobility. And you can see that it's very important what ELVITEN has done. First of all, because they have been 5 types of electric vehicles, 4 types of electric light vehicles, and regular electric vehicle cars. And the amount of trips that has been analyzed, it's sufficiently high, not the highest across the world, but it has been the highest or the most important in terms of the number of vehicles, the surveys that have been conducted a priori and ex post, for instance, the ones that my colleague Andrew Winder has just presented. And the amount of detail that we have had about the users, the characteristics of the trips, date and time, trip purpose, etc., etc. I will present this to you in the next slides. So how have we collected this data? So fundamentally, we have collected it through three means. First of all, the black boxes that were installed inside each and every one of the vehicles, where we could collect the position, the speed, the state of charge of the battery of the different vehicles. Second, as you have deducted from the presentation from Andrew, there were a number of ICT tools that were required, for booking, for registering your trip purpose before you were handed out a vehicle, or when you register for a long-term usage, a rental of the vehicle. Again, the word rental maybe is not correct because they were lent for free. And last but not least, there have been questionnaires ex ante and ex post, both to citizens and to actual users during the pilots. So this is all the information that we have analyzed. It's an impressive amount of information with more than 220 million, for instance, telemetry values. And we had to integrate it, combine it, filter it, match it. So there was a strong exercise, an important exercise behind the curtains, let's say. I will not stay here long. We have used several platforms. We have used Python as well to collect extra information. Tableau was the visualization software we used, but this is not too relevant for you. So here's a summary of key data for the project. 607 active users, 38,000, nearly 39,000 trips analyzed. We had a few more by the end of the project, but we had to stop at a given moment and start analyzing the data. Nearly 55 trips per user in average, 85 trips per day. And we basically traveled 118,000 kilometers with the electric light vehicles, 225 that were involved in the ELVITEN demonstrations. You can see in the trip evolution, obviously here, an impact very important during the lockdown months of the pandemic, March and April of this year. You can see this drop. And you can also observe how we go even to higher statistics after the pandemic lockdowns stop and the economy and the normal life is reopened, slightly. Important to say, I will show this on the screen later, is that the main KPIs of the project have remained stable with very, very little variations along the pilot demonstrations. That is, we could have stopped, in other words, the pilot in October or in January, in October last year or January this year, and basically we would have got the same fundamentals, the same KPIs, from the data analysis. Of course, we waited until the end of the pilot to see if there were new patterns or new trends emerging. Here you can observe in the screen the trip drop, which is quite remarkable, above all in the month of April, And here, of course, I'm referring to the figures of the project. So you see that there's this drop that is important during the month of April. The first half of March was pretty spectacular, but the second half of March, the drop has started, but still the overall number is quite high compared to the average of the previous months in 2019 and early 2020. But the important thing that I want to show to you is that the moment the lockdowns are removed, the usage increases exponentially. So people realized at that time, and that has been one of the conclusions of our data analysis, people have realized that electric light vehicles, they're a good alternative for a sustainable mobility in urban areas when you have to take care of yourself due to sanitary or health reasons. We will see this later. An important element to highlight here is the average trip distance. Why do I say this? I say this because there's, let's say, quite solid literature research that shows that the average distance travel when you cycle in a muscular way with your bicycle in cities is around 1.5 kilometers. When this moves up to an electric bike, that is a bike up to 250 watts, in the engine power, this distance more or less is increased to circa 3 kilometers. And what we have observed in this project, this is one of the key results emerging from the project, is that this trip distance increases to 4 kilometers when the user, the final consumer, is offered a vehicle that has more power, more engine power. And we will see also the consequences of having this extra engine power, this extra autonomy, you know, given the battery range, and how there are things that happen that are different to what happens with bicycles or with regular electric bikes. So again, please keep this figure in your mind, these 4 kilometers, which is a very interesting outcome of the project. I said before that the 5 KPIs that we chose at the time have more or less remained stable across the project. The ones we chose were, obviously, you can imagine, this is normal, the number of trips, the number of users, the percentage of work education as a trip purpose, the percentage of male users, we could have used female, but we chose male, and the percentage in the age group 30 to 59, that is professionals, adults. So basically you can see that the KPIs have stayed quite stable throughout the project. And this is important because this shows the solidity, the strong foundation of the conclusions that we are presenting to you. Here, this is maybe not very interesting, but as I said earlier, there were 5 types of electric vehicles involved, 4 types of electric light vehicles, and what you would call a regular electric car. And of course, there were differences, you know, in the kilometers traveled. Also, this is very important and depends on the use cases that we were piloting. But again, and offering some hope, you know, for electric light vehicles for the future, you can see that the daily distance travel by the smallest, the less powerful of these type of vehicles, L1 EAs, which is, you would see more or less an electric bike, but with a much more powerful engine. The average distance travel was above 20 kilometers a day, which is pretty interesting, and let's say shows clearly the potential of this kind of vehicles in the market. The average speed was not bad, was nearly 19 kilometers an hour, which is not bad. And it is sufficient for urban conditions. It is ideal, I would say, for cycle paths, but not in every municipality it is allowed that these kind of vehicles, you know, travel through the regular cycle paths, and sometimes they're just sent to the regular streets. But still, the average speed, you can see it's sufficient, let's say, for urban trips in the congested towns that we have nowadays. What about the purpose of the trips? Basically, there were 2 key, let's say, hits here. One was work and education. This accounted for more than 65% of all the trips we have analyzed, and leisure, entertainment, visits to friends, family, etc., 25%. Again, I insist this pretty much derives and is a result of the use cases we chose, the kind of people that received the vehicles. And well, I leave it there for you, for your consideration. Let's move on. Another thing I wanted to highlight here, it's that we discriminated the type of users in 3 types of users. Regular users were for us users that had more than 20 trips collected and at least 10 trips in one single month. We consider tested users those with 3 or less trips recorded, and occasional users any other kind of user. The important thing to highlight here, again, that shows the solidity, the strong foundation of our data, is that nearly 95% of the trips were carried out by regular users. This is very important because the conclusions that we extract, again, are very strong, and they are emerging from users that have become acquainted to the vehicle, are using it them regularly during their daily lives, commuting, other purposes, etc. Yes, regarding the age groups, I have commented before, this is pretty much something that becomes automatically derived from the kind of people that were lent the vehicles, but okay, young adults in general, professionals, etc. So what about the time? Again, this derives pretty much from the use cases. We can see that the vehicles were used during daytime between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. across the different cities, and that there was more usage during weekdays rather than during the weekends. I will not stay here. I will not stay here on this element for now. Regarding trip density, this is another of the very interesting, in my opinion, conclusions of the projects. What we have observed from the map analysis, map matching analysis, is that ELV users they are braver, let's say, than regular electric bike users or cyclists, and they dare to invade, if you allow me the colloquial term or the joke. They don't care about jumping into the main streets, avenues, roads, rings, etc., to move around their cities. And this behavior is pretty different than what we observe with vehicles with, as I said earlier, less powerful engines. No? So again, this one of the main conclusions of the project. You can see the density maps, and I guess the presentations will be circulated later to you, so you can observe this with a little bit more of detail. What about charging behavior? What we saw is that sometimes the vehicle were charged at the user's home at night. And given the business cases, the use cases, sorry, that we used, sometimes, very often as well, they were charged in the companies, institutions, or public bodies, that were lending, the vehicles to their employees, to their collaborators, etc. No? So again, the charging time was very clear. It was at night and sometimes during business hours. Let's move on. So some more key conclusions that we can derive from the project is we believe that electric light vehicles you're seeing on the screen, actually you're seeing here 3 of the vehicle types that we used. You're seeing here this small vehicle, the second one, and then the L1EAs I was referring to. And what we have concluded, obviously, is that they are a very nice and suitable alternative to complement, traditional means of urban transport. They are sustainable, they are electrical, and as I said earlier, I repeat my words, people dare to use them, people dare to use them a lot, to travel longer distances, etc. And what we have also observed is, despite what some of the surveys say, at the end of the day, there's not such a strong need to rely on a wide charging infrastructure, something that, for instance, is commented widely when it comes to the regular electric car. And why this? Because there's a long range autonomy. Here we are speaking about 40, 50, 60, 70 kilometers autonomy. So normally it's enough that you make your daily commuting, your day-to-day trips, you come back home, you recharge, and then the following day comes. So again, this has been another of the conclusions that I would like to highlight from the data analysis. And well, that would be all for today at my end. And I thank you very much for the opportunity, and I hope you have enjoyed the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, José. And now we have a presentation from Martin Wagner from Atos. The presentation is about the ELVs and the energy distribution grid. There is already the presentation.
Okay, I am
Martin.
muted.
Okay, yeah.
Perfect. I'm sorry.
You can see your screen.
Yeah. Let me see. Okay, yeah, now perfect.
Perfect.
Sorry, I don't have a camera, so that I put a photo on my presentation. Good afternoon to all of you. As said by Silvia, thank you. I'm Martin Wagner. I'm working for Atos in Spain in the Research and Innovation Department as project manager. My presentation today will be focused mostly on the results found during the ELVITEN project regarding light electrical vehicles and their impact on the distribution grid. Okay, for that, for that, I will have a short presentation or slide really regarding light electrical vehicles and the distribution grid, what we think is the future for the development of light electrical vehicles, our main finding regarding business opportunities related to swapping stations, and finally, our conclusions. Regarding the charge impact of the electrical vehicles on the distribution grid. Based on the charging of the analysis of the charging behavior, we concluded that almost all these vehicles, as said previously by Jose, are charged by the home users at home at night, of course, and at location of companies, institutions, or public bodies. I mean here that this is more related to companies that provide sharing or renting services to his employment or to external people. We also found out that light electrical vehicles do not need extensive charging infrastructure because mostly they can be charged using a common plug-in at home, at the office, or at the premises of the company. Another finding was that we installed e-hubs where you can store or pick up the vehicle. And this provided additional convenience and security for the users of this pattern of use for light electrical vehicles, let me say so. Finally, that leads us to decide or to define that if you have a well-planned charging strategy for your light electrical vehicles, there will not be direct consequences on the distribution rates, meaning that no constraints are expected. Regarding the development of light electrical vehicles, what we found out is, first of all, the solution must be robust for the market, meaning that the materials used for the development of these vehicles should ensure a life cycle or lifespan really from 3 to 5 years. Also, changing the possibility to charge these light electrical vehicles in a fast charging point or the usual charging point should be both options available. The integration of space savings and charging infrastructures and other additional services that can be related to the usage of light electrical vehicles is a must and should be provided in the near future. Finally, also, new software applications should be developed mainly focused on block functionalities during the use of these light electrical vehicles. Examples are the battery management system, the battery charging requirements, how to control the motor of the vehicle, etc. Regarding swapping station, we understood that this is the most important business opportunity we identified related to sharing or renting light electrical vehicles. Why? Mainly because the charging time is now will be reduced from 6 to 8 hours to 2 or 3 minutes because it's easy to manage these batteries because they are small and easy to handle. Also, the quantity of charging points are lesser. You don't need more charging infrastructure. It's enough if you have a swapping station where you charge these batteries and then you exchange them based on the requirements of the user that need your service. This also reduces, mainly and really important, reduces the range anxiety that is usually related to electrical vehicles. Furthermore, this swapping station can be upgraded and ensure that you can refeed to the grid energy in case of necessity. Regarding our conclusions, my presentation is very short, you can see. Okay, batteries of ELVs are not capable to support the distribution grid because they are too small. Their capacity is too small. Therefore, also the bidirectional charging stations and light electrical vehicles that provide bidirectional exchange of energy does not exist in the market. At this moment, only one vehicle is available, and this is the Nissan Leaf, and has not been tested in real conditions because they are not infrastructure for that in the market, I mean. And business opportunities for market players are mainly related to the improvement of the smart charging infrastructure and the development of the electrical transportation. This means ensure additional electric mobility at cities. And as I mentioned previously, swapping station is the most important business opportunity that we understand are related to light electrical vehicles because they are easy to handle, are easy to charge, are easy to store and can. And that's so important from the point of view of supporting the grid. They can be upgraded to feed back to the distribution grid. And that's it for my side. As you can see, a short presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. And now we have a presentation about recommendations for DLV manufacturers from Philip Heim from Keyboards.
Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Great. So I tried to share my screen. Can you see the presentation now?
Yes.
Great. Thanks. So welcome to my presentation. I'm going to talk about recommendations for manufacturers of light electric vehicles. Now I need to check how I can. So my name is Philipp Heim. I'm a project manager for Keyboard Switzerland AG. And here you can see the table of contents. So first I'm going to give you a short introduction of Keyboards just to understand the context of how we were involved into the project. Then I'm going to talk about the customer jobs we were analyzing or we saw during the sharing of light electric vehicles. Then I'm going to talk about the pains and gains we analyzed during the project. And in the end, I have a part about the operational requirements we suggest for other manufacturers of light electric vehicles or of vehicles in general. First, to the introduction of Keyboards. We are a Swiss company. We develop, produce, and maintain electric vehicles since 1991. Everything based in Switzerland, production as well as development and the maintenance. We have around more than 150 employees and a yearly turnover of 50 million Swiss francs. That was the figure for last year. And in total, we have more than 22,000 vehicles on the road globally. So here you can see our main vehicles are like light electric vehicles, mainly for the last mile delivery for postal institutions, but also other logistics companies. And of course, we also use or have vehicles for private usages. So here you can see the first vehicle and the third vehicle here were involved in the ELVITEN project as well as a variant of this logistics vehicle. We also use software or fleet management system in various fleets. Here you can see we have in Australia 200 of our vehicles we monitor with our fleet management system, but we also use it in other fleets, like for example, winter clearing machines, trucks, and also in the bikes used in ELVITEN, in the light electric vehicles or the light electric bikes. And this was also how what we contributed to the project. First, we contributed vehicles, 20 vehicles in total, and we supplied the fleet management system or the black boxes to all the vehicles used in ELVITEN project. Now I'm going to talk about the customer jobs. So basically here we can see the customer jobs. One of the customers who wants to use a shared electric vehicle has to do. He has to find the vehicle on his phone, then reserve it, go to the vehicle, unlock it, then ride from A to B, do his trip, park the vehicle, lock it, and potentially charge it if necessary and possible. And we were asking the users about their pains and gains they experienced during these customer jobs. So first, the pains. This is basically said, yeah, it needs a long time to refuel, and the weather has an effect because most of the vehicles were not closed. So if it's raining, the driver gets wet, and as well the speed was mentioned as a critical criteria. For the gains, they mentioned specifically available navigation services and available user assistance. Maybe I have to say as well that these pains and gains are those which were related to a manufacturer of the electric vehicles. There were more, but which were not directly related to us, but more to, for example, what a city should provide in subsidies or something like this. So when we talk about operational requirements, our main takeaway was that basically on the one hand, we have the technical requirements for the vehicle, which is a charging time, the protection against the weather, as well as the speed. But what we saw is that to provide a good vehicle is necessary, but will not be the main driver for success. On the other hand, we need a software. And what is quite interesting, or the app the user is using in such a shared scheme, and what we see is quite interesting that here in the customer jobs, mainly most or all of these 8 steps are actually related to your app much more than to your vehicle. The vehicle is here in the ride from A to B, as well as when you need to charge it. But everything else is mainly driven by the app, or the first thing the user is doing, he is interacting with the app, and only on a second level with the vehicle. As well as the user assistance and the navigation is also more related to the app than to the vehicle. That means for a manufacturer of light electric vehicles, we have to be aware of the fact that the vehicle will still be necessary, but becomes less important than actually the app of the user is using. So what we do, or what a manufacturer of light electric vehicles has to do, is he has to integrate the communication module into his vehicle. So for example, we can use here our own fleet box, but of course there could be also the technology or the hardware from another supplier, which has to be integrated to the vehicle. So there needs to be an API or something to the vehicle where you can collect data and information from the vehicle. And here you can see this box. This is generally different types of information. For example, the ignition, is the vehicle turned on or off? Then, for example, a detection of some switches, is the door open or not, depending on the vehicle type. Then, of course, integration with the different components in the vehicle, for example, the battery voltage, that you can monitor the battery voltage, the temperature, the speed, the position, and as well as other data like errors, trip data, usage. These are all essential data which this box then can actually collect from the vehicle. The data will be then sent through the telecommunication network to a server in the internet, from where we can then access the data of the vehicle again. So we call this digital twin. We build up a digital twin of the vehicle in the internet, so you can from a remote location monitor the vehicle, but also interact with the vehicle. For example, unlock it via your app, which will also be the same way, but on the other side, like from the app over the internet back to the vehicle to unlock it. So this capability is basically the basis to be able to provide such a service. And here you can see the result then. You have an overview of the whole fleet, of the sharing fleet. This is now our fleet, our own company fleet, but just as an example, you can see where the vehicles are. And first of all, the status, how many are okay, how many there is a warning, like the vehicle can still operate, but you should take care of it, and how many have an error, so it can't drive anymore. As well as you can see the performance, how many vehicles are active, how many inactive, and last but not least, lots of safety and security issues the software can actually solve. For example, if a customer wants to ride a vehicle and he sees that there is a technical problem, he can't ride it, so he can send via the system a notification, and then the operator can take care of the vehicle and knows where the vehicle is and so on. Then also the vandalism detection, like there are sensors in the vehicle. So if somebody, for example, throws the vehicle off from a bridge into a river, then these sensors can detect it and can send a warning. So basically one can take care of that. Another interesting option here would be, because I think for sharing applications, vandalism can be a problem. And if we deploy, for example, cameras on the vehicle, and whenever such a sensor is going off, for example, when the vehicle is falling over, then it could automatically turn on the cameras and film the 10 seconds or something. So maybe afterwards somebody has the chance to see what actually happened and maybe figure out who did that. As well as theft protection is also an important function for these sharing schemes, because like you can do with geofencing, you can define an area, and whenever the vehicle is leaving this area, there will be sent an information. So obviously, if it's leaving the area where it should be operated, it could have been stolen. So you can react on that. Furthermore, you can then collect data about trips. Here you can see for one vehicle, for example, always the timestamp, as well as this is now how often they stopped, but you can have the speed or whatever. Just the vehicle is sending, whenever it is on the road, each 5 seconds or 1 second, depending on the settings, the position and status, as well as some technical. Here, for example, you can see the speed over time, or the battery, the state of charge of the battery, and so on. And this data is then also can be used to calculate from the data to trips what it was actually a trip, because the black box itself cannot detect which are the trips. So basically you have to define the algorithm how you can detect individual trips. This was also part of the work we did in the ELVITEN project. And then you have to conduct the trips, not during ELVITEN now, but in a real sharing scheme. You have to process it to get the invoice data that you then basically can invoice the customer. And of course, send then reports to the customer or the app, as well as a potential ERP integration that you can handle this automatically, because the larger the sharing scheme or the sharing opportunity or solution is, the more has to be done automatic, because otherwise you can't handle it anymore. And what we learned out of the whole project is, first, that the app or the software solution is similarly important or even more important than the vehicle itself, and that you have to get an app which has all these functions which are useful or necessary within one solution. So basically we have here the overview of the trips, in personal trips as well as total trips of the whole fleet, then position, reservation, then an overview of your trips, and potentially an incident report, and so on. There are lots of functions we were able to detect or see that they were important during the project, and we are working on them now. So basically I can say that thanks to ELVITEN, we were able to get a lot of experience in digitalization of our products, as well as what I think is very important also as recommendation for others, that the opportunity to work in a consortium that represents the whole ecosystem of such a solution, like reservation providers, charging providers, parking providers, etc., is very important, that you don't build a solution which is not integrated in the end, because it's a whole ecosystem that has to work together. And yes, thanks to ELVITEN, we are now ready to share our own sharing solution with our vehicles, or also for other vehicles or vehicles of other manufacturers. That's for my presentation. Thank you very much, and I try to hand back the screen.
Thank you, Philip. Now I think that we have the question and answer and some discussion about the webinar topics. So I give the floor to Andrew. That I don't know if you have collected some question on the chat from the participants.
Hello, thank you. I didn't get anything in the chat, so maybe before we go into the questions, I turn my camera off because it doesn't look very good video at the moment. This is just to remind you, we're really at the end of the ELVITEN project now. So some of you might have joined our previous webinar or the final event, which happened last week. In case you didn't, we did do a webinar at the beginning of September, 1st of September. So if you look at the ELVITEN website, elviten-project.eu and library, you can see the results of our first webinar, and that concentrated on mobility and light electric vehicle use before and after the COVID-19 pandemic. So this was really the experience of this, what happened this year on mobility, and then the presentations and recording of the final event that happened last week are not yet online, but they will be soon. So please keep an eye on for that. Out for that. This is a complimentary webinar to just to focus on some extra issues and not to cover the whole of the project, which was covered. The rest was covered last week. So this is not everything. So having said that, thank you very much, Philip, Martin, and Jose, for your presentations. If anybody has any questions or doesn't understand something, or clarification, or even a comment on any of the presentations, you can either write it in the chat box at the bottom. You see chat, and you can write your question, or you can maybe request the moderator to unmute yourself, or you can maybe unmute yourself and raise your hand and ask the question. So anything for Jose Papi or Martin Wagner, Philip Heim, who just presented now, or for myself, then we'd be happy to hear from you. Okay, I don't see any questions coming at the moment. Do any of the presenters or partners in this project want to raise any additional points that are relevant to these presentations that hasn't been said in the presentations? No, I don't see any questions yet. Well, of course, you can also email the moderator of this webinar.
Sorry, Andrew. Yes, at
Have
the
I
end,
gone quite?
of the webinar. During the next days, we upload the video of the presentation, so you can find the presentation, and at the end of each presentation there is the email address of each speaker, so you can reach each of us, and on the official website of ELVITEN you have all the information for you, and if you need to reach us, we are available for info.
Okay, thank you, Sylvia. I think yeah, my connection is not going great at the moment, so apologies if you don't hear me. So thank you for all the presenters. Of course, if you wish to know any more information, there's also, you can contact one of the presenters, as Sylvia said. There is also a general contact email on the ELVITEN website, elviten.project. elviten-project.eu. You can go to the contacts section at the bottom of the page, and please keep an eye on our website and our social media for further outcomes of this project. Thank you very much. I hope this was interesting and useful for you, and I think we can perhaps finish early now. We've been super efficient. So thank you from my side.
Yes, I won't. Thank you too. It was a great opportunity. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present today.
Thank you to all the speakers. So I think that yes, if there is no answer, we can conclude our webinar.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Goodbye.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye and take care.
You.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you so much.